Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for our roundtable. We're going to be discussing transforming financial services, technological innovation, and cultural change. I'm Allison Williams. I cover the global investment banks and asset managers for Bloomberg Intelligence. That's Bloomberg's in-house proprietary research service that includes some of the biggest global banks, as well as working with our global team around the world on both banks and fintech. And so I'm really excited to be hosting this panel today. It's an important topic for all of the companies that I cover, and obviously important for the industry, and very excited to have a panel of some of the leading digital executives in banking today. But before we go to the panel and some of the questions, I'd like to kick it off by introducing Jean-Philippe with IBM, and he's going to help to frame our discussion today. So take it away, Jean.
Thank you so much, Alison. And again, good morning, good afternoon to all our colleagues coming from all over the world. So just a few words to introduce this discussion and engage this dialogue about what is happening around AI and data. The more obvious statement that we could do today is we are facing right now, and we are acting to accelerate the pace of what we call the digital transformation. And this is obvious, and this is what we see all over the world. But I think that it's not only an acceleration that we are facing right now, it's about how to position AI and data at scale within banks, insurers all over the world. And when you think about this notion of acceleration at scale and efficiently, we see three big things which are happening. The first one is about that banks are designing, implementing some specific operating models which are enabling them to position AI and data at scale within the enterprise. And we are hearing some names such as cognitive factories, garage, AI and data innovation center, whatever the names. At the end of the day, it is not happening by magic. The banks are taking strong decisions to scale AI and data within the enterprise. The second thing that we are right now working on is about the notion of AI and data platform. Very interesting topic, because in the last 10 years, we have seen build many capabilities around data everywhere within the line of business. We have built some AI capabilities, but what we see right now is really a convergence, a combination of AI and data supported by the notion of open ecosystem, open platform, which are able to combine AI and data within an open ecosystem. Last but not least, nothing will happen without trust. And financial services is all about trust. And the translation of trust with AI and data, it's about how to be able to ensure what we are delivering can be trusted. What is the notion of responsible AI? What is the notion of ethics? What is the notion of transparency, robustness of all what we are building right now, and how to ensure that what we are building can be explicable with the end users, could be a partners, could be a customers. And I really think that 2021 will be a year where the notion of trust, ethical AI, responsible AI will be more than critical. Alison, it was just few words about this, what is happening right now, the dynamics that we are facing, and I will go back to you.
Okay, thank you. Very exciting. And so with that, maybe one place to start the discussion is with the customer. So the core of any business, obviously, but I know within banking, obviously that's a big focus, and a lot of the participants have some insights in terms of what they're doing. And so I guess thinking about how using AI to enhance the customer experience, perhaps we can kick it off with Samit. You can share with us some of what you're doing at Bank of America.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. And look, I would like to echo the comments and the sentiments from Jean-Philippe on responsible. So going back to the customer experience, AI has the ability to leverage data and give you insights. So going back to the point that was made by Jean-Philippe, if used responsibly with a clear focus on the customer need, it is a very powerful tool to enhance customer experience. In Bank of America, we have a great example of a customer-driven implementation with an application called Erica. It's our virtual financial assistant on our award-winning mobile application, Bank of America mobile application. Hope you all have it. Erica offers personalized, proactive guidance to help customers stay on top of their finances. It's part of our high-touch strategy. At any given moment, based on any personal circumstances, people may choose to do things in a digital fashion or have face-to-face interaction in the bank. So Erica can provide you a weekly snapshot of your month-to-date spending relative to your typical spending to help you manage your cash flow. It can help you analyze recurring charges and notify you of potentially duplicate bills, or if a charge of a membership increases unexpectedly. So it's really about being client-centric. And think about the current environment that we live in. Having flexible, convenient, secure digital offerings is more important than ever. Erica actually got trained recently to understand over 60,000 coronavirus-related terms and questions and requests to help clients defer payments, apply for the payment protection program, business loans, or just check the status of your federal impact payments. So since its launch 2 years ago, it's helped 15 million clients with over 175 million requests. So here's a good example of a technology that is enhancing customer experience, augmenting the capability that we already have, but built responsibly with a clear eye to the customer.
That's great. Very exciting. And Peter, I think you had some things to share in terms of what you're doing at Scotiabank.
Thanks, Allison. And just to pick up on a couple of the points made earlier, at Scotiabank, what we did about a year and a half ago was we reorganized ourselves in a way to where we brought together both the data organization and the analytics organization and moved that right into the business, right? And so this way we were very much aligned with the business priorities, very much aligned to the customer servicing mentality, right? So most of what we're building now is, in fact, for customers and customer experience. And I think one of the things I'd like to kind of talk about a little bit is very specific, just to give you an example. During the pandemic, obviously, a lot of people's lives got turned upside down. And specifically, their financial situation changed drastically. And so what we did at Scotiabank was we built some analytics and brought in some data, built some analytics to try and identify who were the most vulnerable customers. And then what we did is we identified about 2 million of our customers that were most vulnerable. And then what we did is we proactively reached out to them and were able to provide them customized and personalized solutions to help them through this difficult time. And the results speak for themselves. We went from a delinquency rate of 6.5 to 1.7. So while the expectation in the industry was that delinquency rates would significantly increase, through this analysis, through this personalization, through this proactive reaching out, the customers were really pleased to see the bank cared that much about them. And it kind of reduced the stress level a little bit for them. And like I said, also, resulted in both a mutual benefit. The customers were able to, work with a set of our products with our customer servicing groups to really provide themselves a much better financial future.
Yeah, it's important. It's interesting using technology for such, personal service. Really the key. And Sophie, did you want to share some things that you all are doing?
Yeah, maybe. It's important to start with the customer needs, and indeed, when interacting with the bank, all our customers want it to be fast and easy. And I'll take maybe 4 examples. The 3 first are really about helping the call center or the front line be more efficient. So one example is really able to detect automatically the conversation and go and pick up in the systems the relevant and pull out the relevant information for the front line. This is an example. Another example is able to proactively engage with the customer when on the phone or in face-to-face by using algorithm like next best interaction that are really based on the data and updated regularly. Last, it's about both productivity but also increase the customer knowledge in the bank. When we have a conversation with the customer, it's usually full of very rich data. And so one of the use cases also we're working at is really to have automatic conversation minutes of the conversation, so it can really feed the knowledge system and automatically store that information that we can reuse. I wanted to talk about the second example, which was about how to be more proactive with customer in case of financial difficulties and etc. But this is the same example exactly that was just illustrated. So we are doing this actually also for companies because we operate in France and there are a lot of state guaranteed loans and a lot of help for the companies. And it was important to start to detect out of the revenue of the company what was the real revenue and what was really the aid. So we were through that, not only on the private customers, but also the business customer to start identifying what are the range and the selection of customer that will need, that may be in difficulties as soon as the aid stops. So I will not elaborate further because I think it was very well described by the colleague.
Okay, and obviously an important one being done by different banks.
Yes.
Matt, did you also want to chime in with some of your use cases?
Sure. Thanks, Alison. I'll probably echo a number of the comments that were made here. I mean, the way we think about deployment of this technology is in context of pretty specific customer and business problems. We have a really good sort of persistent team model where they're very targeted and focused on moving the needle, whether it's for a business value problem or a customer problem. And we found that deployment of this technology in service of those problems has been the most effective model. A couple of use cases I would highlight in particular. One, we've had a team sort of focused on helping our customers manage their financial health and wellness. What they had found is that there's a whole host of insight that we provide to customers every day, but one of the biggest problems that they experience very personally is just cash flow shortages. How do they, know that that's coming? How do they manage it if it is coming? What solutions can we offer them? So we deployed a proprietary experience that helps customers within a pretty well-defined window identify that there's a negative cash flow event coming and recommends pretty specific solutions for them to resolve that need, whether it's a transfer or deferral of a payment or whatever the case may be. Really well received for all the reasons I think that folks have brought up in this conversation, right? Which is that it's explainable, it's reliable, it's accurate, and it's only really possible to do this because of this technology. The amount of analytical horsepower required to do this at scale is pretty significant. And just the second one I would raise, because it's a little bit more of a novel use case, is we have teams that focus, of course, on payments, as any bank would. One customer friction point that we identified was just missed bills. And it sounds so trivial, and it's like, how can AI help solve this problem? Well, you find out when you talk to customers that a big reason why they miss bills is just that they're not in the right mental state or position to access their bank account at the moment when they receive it. So the solution that we deployed this technology against was just an experience where a customer can simply send a bill to us, and we use AI and OCR to basically process it and pay it on their behalf. Uptake's been really high for that. It's not a traditional use case that I think we would typically be talking about in a group like this, but it does sort of show you how pervasively and broadly this technology can be applied when you focus on some of those use cases.
Yeah, innovative. And Ankit, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I think you wanted to add something to the discussion.
Sure. Absolutely, and you heard all great examples from colleagues here. One other area that we're really focusing on is really how to help our customers change their behavior, right? So one example there is really helping customers save, right? We know so much about our customers, and really how do we use that information to anticipate their need? So in the case of savings, we know, for example, that customers, get paid every 2 weeks a certain amount. They have, to Matt's point, they have a certain cash flow, based on their historical transactions, and we can identify areas where customers can start saving, which is a really important part of managing your financial health and your wellness. So that's another example of kind of how we at US Bank are thinking about using AI and data to really help our customers.
Okay, great. And did anyone else want to share? Eric, did you want to share something on use cases?
We are doing at Crédit Agricole about all of the above. I would everything that has to be said. I've said that. But in top of it, we had to take care of a lot of businesses in France. Not only distributing the governmental loans, governmental guaranteed loans, but also a moratorium of existing loans. And that was a huge endeavor for the group. And technology helped us a lot on how to reach each company proactively. And it was over 500,000 loans that we have to push forward and propose solutions for. So technology helped a lot.
Okay, great.
Alison, if I may, Alison, I'm very, very excited, but I've just heard from our colleagues. It's really exciting to see how far now AI and data is transforming the overall customer journey. Because if you take each of what has been said, in fact, we are not only transforming the channel through a conversational agent or through an SMS. In fact, we see the customer journey, which is now under big transformation, let's say, impacted by the rise of AI and data. And the second takeaway that I would like to put on the table and maybe to be challenged is about the fact that more and more we see that it is going deeper within the business processes. And by the way, it is impacting the front office, it is impacting the back office, the middle office, and step by step, because we are now, let's say, we have a much more maturity on these topics, I see now, let's say, a deep dive within really the core business of the client relationship. What I say makes sense, or maybe just to put that on the table and to get some feedbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just throw in. I think it's exciting from the bank's perspective, just as someone who's followed the industry for a long time, the move from back office to front office and all of the examples that were really just discussed. Really helping that front office experience, and so sort of more of a proactive effect. And I don't know if any of the other participants want to chime in. And maybe
go
ahead. Go ahead.
Now, maybe to say that, yeah, indeed, it touches also other aspects of the bank, such as, for example, pricing. We had very successful implementation with the machine learning algorithm to adjust pricing. And it leads to really a lot of more increase of margin, but also scoring, of course, with the models that can be much more performing, but also are quicker to develop, but also anti-money law, so help avoid false positive and detection of fraud. I think it's as exactly Jean-Philippe said. I think there's not a single piece of what the bank does that cannot be optimized through machine learning and those technologies. So completely agree with what you said.
Okay, yes, and Celie, did you want to give some thoughts from the compliance perspective on that?
Sure. I mean, one of the things we've got to be conscientious about is the additional stakeholder external to us. We need to make sure that our regulators understand what we're doing, how we're building these use cases, how we are ensuring and validating that we are not, we don't have unintended consequences, which they could say are regulatory violations, and be able to demonstrate to them how we built a model, how we built a use case. They are very concerned about the black box that's been talked about for a long time. And in a recent Federal Reserve event, one of the Fed governors, and I've got the quote here, said that it was really important for the organizations when they're adopting AI, that the regulators they have accountability to. They must provide appropriate expectations and adjust those expectations as the use of AI in financial services and our understanding of its potential and risk evolve. So not only do we need to make sure that we're educating ourselves and those who will use those models, because sometimes it's a data scientist in the background, hears from the business what they are seeking, it gets built. There has to be rigor and discipline in testing and validating those models. A model governance process needs to be in place as well. And we've got to make sure that we're using it for the benefit of all, not just the organization, but for our employees, making sure they understand how to use it, how they can tweak and fine tune, and then ultimately making sure that we're also taking care of the customer. In the end, I love what Peter said about how they're using AI. That is a compassionate way of using AI that is truly meaningful. So there are components that we've got to be conscientious of. We don't want to prevent innovation or be an obstacle to creativity, but we have to go slowly enough so that our regulators can follow along and be supportive of what we're doing. We can influence the kinds of guidance and requirements they put around this. So making sure not to forget those stakeholders of the agencies, to have those conversations and taking the time to educate them can really improve the financial services industry innovation with AI in particular.
And I think that sort of does bring us to a broader conversation, right, about sort of transparency and the regulatory effects. Maybe before we go down that path, Roshan, you're probably the one person we haven't heard from yet in terms of what you're doing at your bank, in terms of use cases or your experience. Do you want to chime in before we move on to that, to sort of the next topic?
Yeah, I think on this point, I think the internal and external education point is key, because I think early on it was clear that it was a need to define what it is and what it's not when it comes to data ethics, because there was misinterpretations all over the place. So laying the foundations of that was important, and bringing the regulator on the journey, because they themselves are thinking through what this means, and we're working with them in instances to test out the practicalities of, well, if we bring in regulations, what does that mean? Is it achievable? And, do you go principle-based? Do you go prescriptive? Because prescription will stifle innovation. So it's, I think, being transparent as an organization is good. I mean, you see the likes of Google, HSBC, Vodafone publishing their principles in the absence of, regulation, right? And I think more and more we'll see that. And the more the customers see that, they'll know, well, what are we doing with their data? How are we making the decisions? Which for us, I mean, being UK's largest retail bank, is super important. So that's just my take there.
Okay, great. Yeah. And Peter, did you want to also sort of share more broadly on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I'm going to maybe echo a little bit of what Roshan said. First, I'm going to kind of expand the definition a little bit, because a lot of folks will talk about AI ethics, but I'm going to talk more about data ethics, right? And the reason why that's really important is, we use data every day in standard operational processes. We use data for just standard decision-making processes. And yes, we absolutely use a lot of data in our AI processes as well. But it's really important that we respect and use data generally in a way that is, number one, meets our customer. The way I guess I'd generalize it is say the use of data according to our customers' expectations, right? It's not like there's a law that says you do this and you don't do that, right? Ethics is a little more nuanced than that. And it's really important that as a company, we respect how the customer's data and how we use it. And I'm gonna go backwards in history a little bit if I could. In the very, very, very early days of banking, people had, to trust a bank that they would get their money back, right? They were going to give money to this institution and hope they get their money back. And that trust built up over time. Now nobody worries, hopefully, that they're going to get their money back from a bank. So that trust has been established. Now that trust factor is moving to data, right? I have to trust. I'm giving you I'm not just giving you my money. I'm giving you my information, some of my most personal things, how I act, what I do, and I'm going to trust you that you're doing the right things with it. And at the Scotiabank, we've built a whole framework around how are we going to treat data ethics? How are we going to ensure the integrity of what we do? And how are we going to ensure that there's that, and there was a word used earlier, transparency. And I'm going to say it goes beyond the regulators. Really, it's a bond between us and our customers.
Yeah, and I think to your point, trust is so important in the banking system, and so it really is sort of an intersection of the key issue, and something that perhaps the industry can benefit from because they have built up that trust.
Absolutely.
And then maybe taking that a little bit more broadly and thinking about sort of culture and how does technology fit into the culture of the bank. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, Peter, and then throw it to the other participants.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this whole evolution is a cultural evolution to some extent, right? We talk about, and it's in a lot of different angles, right? It's how do we evolve ourselves to be, as an organization, to be more data driven, right? And by becoming more data driven, I think you become also more fair, right? Because it's no longer relying on individuals to make individual decisions, but there's a level of consistency to the decision-making process. So you level out the playing field, let's call it, and it's more explainable, right? And now with all the new technologies that we have at our disposal, right, it is able to do things that we weren't able to do before because it's able to take in a lot more information. And it's being able to analyze that information, not just current information, but historical trends and even more projected type information. And I think this is why ethics has become such an important component, because in the past you had limited access and limited use of data. But now that you have such a broad access to data and deeper access to even, more, I'm going to use the word personal data, now becomes even more important that we understand our responsibility as it relates to that. And as we continue to go down this evolution, I think again with the right mindset, it's all about the customer, and it really is. How do we continue to strengthen that bond with our customer? How do we continue to ensure that we're servicing that customer in the multi channels that they want to interact with us in, and also. I like this term that I've heard a while ago. It's called the segment of one. In other words, it's no longer segmenting your customers, like bucketing them into these different segments, but actually every individual is a segment. And so meaning everything is focused on that individual or that customer as opposed to generalizing their needs.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And Samit, did you want to add to this discussion?
Yeah, look, I agree with all of that. I actually would like to broaden the definition of technology's impact on culture, because think about today, technology impacts everyday lives for us, how we interact with each other, how we communicate. It empowers us to do things that we never thought we could do without it. And I think reality is, what we do and how we do it impacts the lives of people around us, and therefore impacts culture. So I think it's more important than ever, therefore, to sort of echo everybody's statement over here. Do everything responsibly, because if you don't do it responsibly, the impact to culture is not as positive as it could be if you do things responsibly and you deploy things responsibly. And that means, being customer centric, keeping humans in the loop. That actually means doing things that can lift society, right? And the can do versus should do is also very important. The fact that you can do something doesn't mean you should do it, right? Having the right diversity, right, in the mix, being deliberate, the discussions around bias, around transparency, around just the whole aspect of ethics here, data responsibility. I think all of that comes into changing culture positively and making sure that people have a positive impact and outcome from technology. Just us, in Bank America, just a couple of those dimensions. I mean, we have a framework in how we do things, right? Like all of you have talked about. But each of these elements of the framework we take very seriously. So we talk about you can't build things the right way if you don't have the right diversity of the team that's building it, right? So as an example, 50% of our management team is diverse in the bank. 50% of our workforce are women. 40% of the US-based workforce of the people are colored. So, if you go by each element that goes into sort of the ingredient of making great responsible technology, and if you manage every element of that, you will have better outcomes and have better impact to people's lives. Make sure digital is not a divider, but it lifts society throughout. So culture is, I think, is one of the most important topics over here, and it's one of the biggest things we can influence in a positive way.
If I can build upon that, thank you for bringing diversity into the conversation. It's truly important. I want to, I don't know if I'm broadening the culture comment or not, but the impact on the culture is also about the morale that can be improved because technology allows our people to actually do the work we hire them to do. So many times we have people spending time organizing data, accessing data, and it takes them so long to even get it ready to do the work they're intended to do, to actually analyze the work. So the technology aspect of improving their experience of doing their work, of adding value to the process really has a tremendous impact on the culture, and the pride that comes with improving productivity and being able to measure that in a way that wasn't measurable before, because we have the data, because we have those hard facts that we're talking about, has certainly made a difference in our organization as we've been able to stand up an advanced analytics discipline. And that team drives the strategy, but they also teach others to fish. So they don't just drive strategy, they help people help themselves, help understand, and teach them how to access data more effectively, work with our technology partners to make sure that the data is clean. We've talked a lot about that in the data ethics, but just getting it to where it's ready to use can make a huge impact on the culture.
That's good. That's great insight. Thanks. And Matt, I think you wanted to add to the discussion as well.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. I do think this is sort of part of the broader journey to just break down some of the artificial barriers that have existed in banks for a really long time, right? There's people focused pretty squarely on the problem space. There's people focused pretty squarely on the solution space. The kind of conversation about Agile of yesteryear was really about breaking down sort of this very kind of pronounced barrier between business people and technologists. This is now, I think, the next horizon of that, right? Data science coming into the equation where when the problem is experience personalization at scale and how can we leverage data to drive business benefit and benefit for our customers ultimately, how do you actually bring the right people into that discussion and help them push the thinking that a person who otherwise doesn't understand the space doesn't even know is possible. And I think to Jean-Philippe's earlier comment, like that really matters when you start to get into the experience in the front end. Because the thing at the back is you have a lot of people who are accustomed to leveraging data to make decisions, and you have lots of people on the front that haven't historically leveraged data to the same degree for reasons, frankly, of technology limitations, right? Did we have the data? How would we even deploy it for the customer? Now that all those barriers are gone, it's like you bring these people together and you really do see a tremendous amount of value created as people start to understand, the patch, so to speak, that everyone else is living on.
If I may, I cannot agree more on what has been said, and this is really what we are facing right now. It's all about culture. And as far as we are concerned with our partners and clients, very often we think that technology can solve everything. I think that technology obviously is helping, will continue to help, but it has to be a combination of human plus technology. And especially in the topic that we are right now discussing all together around trust, transparency, fairness, and so on. It has to be a combination. And between you and me, when you see the regulators globally And they want to see this combination in order to supervise what we are doing to make sure that it is, again, fair, transparent, explicable, and so on. The second thing that I would like to add, we have discussed a lot about data, and I fully agree with you. Data is one critical leg of what we are doing around AI. But I would like to add another perspective, and please to get your feedback on this one. AI is about learning systems. These systems are learning from who? From us. And so what do we need to make it work? We need set of data, curated, trusted, clean, and so on. But we need to be super careful with the training process itself. And we need to make sure that the approach, the methodology, the people who are working on this training process are diverse, are inclusive, to make sure we are bringing together a way to work which is new, which is fair, which is transparent, and which is the reflect of the society. If I may, please, again, don't hesitate to give us your feedback, your insight on this perspective. Do you share this statement, or please be very open with this statement?
Yeah, it's Roshan here. Yeah, I completely agree here, because one of the key things for us is about cross-functional delivery, right? In what we do, bringing the right competencies to the table to develop. And I guess with the emergence of cloud and what we're doing there, it makes some of the things that we used to do, which was really difficult, a lot easier in terms of, spinning up your own infrastructures, not relying on the center. And I guess leveraging things that are far more simpler to do and commoditized. So if you think about drawing upon image recognition APIs, you can do that pretty quickly. You don't need an expert to do it. So a key to our strategy is not centralization. How do you enable everyone else to do it themselves and have business driving the conversation versus technology leading? But it goes hand in hand, right? And it's a different way of working. So over the last 3 years, we've been on a significant digital transformation, which is all about bringing competencies together, agile, different types of role, different engagement with the business. And it's really speeding up the way we innovate, and it's driving a lot of curiosity. And I guess I'll attach that curiosity and innovation to what we talked about with ethics and AI earlier, because with curiosity and innovation, we've got to have some guardrails in place to make sure we do the right thing. So although we'll make lives easier by federating what we do, we need to make sure we've got control and eyes all over the patch. So I think we've got to have a balanced approach of doing what we do and delivering in new ways, because it will bring a lot of benefit, but still it will bring additional other new work that we didn't have to do. Right? Data governance will look different, right? It won't just suddenly disappear. So I completely, agree with what you're saying there. And I guess for me, the key thing is data and AI as a product, intrinsic by design, right, is where we're headed. And I think most people that I've talked to in the industry are heading exactly the same way. At different paces. The intent is right, the objective is there, but it is difficult, because if you think about all of these large financial organizations, large legacy estates, large processes, want to shift to the cloud. Well, actually, we have dependencies, we have regulation. So how do we actually incrementally improve and release value, right, whilst modernizing our estate?
And if I can pick up with Jean-Philippe, and echo a little bit of what Roshan said, was you're absolutely right. I mean, it is about the training, but that training is reliant on, use that D word again, data, right? And I think the risk we run here, right, is the fact that you can't assume that historical data, just purely using historical data, will give us the right answers for the future, right? And in fact, you can argue that just the opposite. The risk is, and it's real risk. We've all seen the examples that if you use just raw historical data, it actually is presumably or potentially biased. That data is potentially biased because it has some of the negatives of the culture of the past, let's call it, right? And if you perpetuate that, what you're doing is perpetuating that bias into the future. So it's a really, it's an easily said and a difficult task, but an important task to really understand the outcomes of, and this goes during the build, as you're building out the processes and training the AI, the machine learning capabilities, to then take a step back and really determine if the outcomes are, just and fair and transparent, right? And then I'd say the work doesn't stop there, because we all talk, the other thing to consider is what we call drift, right? That over time, it may be just fine when you first set it out, you put it through all the rigors you need to, and it passed all the transparency, it didn't look biased, et cetera. But you can't then just say, I'm done. You have to continually check it to ensure that drift hasn't occurred, and then unintended biases get reintroduced. And it's really is an important and responsible thing to do, and it has to be built into the frameworks we were talking about, have to be built into the processes that we were talking about.
Yeah, so definitely some important considerations, and maybe like switching perhaps to the other side of things, to the customer adoption side of things. Ankit, I think you wanted to speak a little bit about what we're seeing in terms of adoption. Conversational technologies is one of the newer focuses. Can you talk a little bit about adoption?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's exciting about having this technology and this access to data real time is it really helps us create an amazing experience, right? At the end of the day, this is all about the customer, and at the end of the day, we want to use this information to help our customers. So, US Bank, we recently launched our smart assistant, which is voice and text enabled, and one of the unique aspects of the experience there is really leveraging not only the core technology, which is voice and natural language understanding, but tying into data, tying into our AI engine, and really using that information to create a conversation experience, right? How do we really understand the customer's intent when they're asking a question, right? So we're going from designing screens and optimizing screens to understanding natural language in the context of the question, so we can then design the experience accordingly. So it's a really powerful capability. We're very excited about it because, as I said, in real-time fashion, not only are we learning a lot from our customers as they interact with this technology, but it actually helps us fuel or helps us design the experience. And one of the aspects of how we designed this at US Bank, right? We co-create with our customers, but also our frontline colleagues, because they are interacting with our customers on an everyday basis, and they understand, customer needs, customer behavior, context of the conversation. So pretty exciting for us to really leverage both the AI technology as well as the conversational technologies to really bring this to life. The other thing I would just like to add, right, to the conversation earlier is, at the end of the day, banking is a human business, right? At the end of the day, we focus a lot on technology and data, but it's really about helping our customers. And, the best, examples that I've seen really cut across both digital and human, how they come together to help our customers. So a lot of focus in US Bank around not only mining that data, having the right AI models, but really sharing that with our frontline colleagues so they can also help our customers, not just about the digital experience in a silo. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about, and really, we're just getting started, right, in terms of where the technology is and what it provides. But we're learning a lot, literally every day from our customers in terms of what matters to them and how we can help them with that experience.
That's great. And Sophie, just given your experience in retail banking, do you want to sort of chime in terms of, you talked a little bit earlier about some of what you're doing with the customer and their experience, but in terms of your feedback loop and what you're seeing in terms of adoption?
Yeah, I don't think this is very different from digital adoption, because I think that if you design the service and you start with the customer and you understand exactly what the pain point is and you design the solution that works really well for the people, there's no problem of appropriation. I think that the problem starts when you start with a technical idea, or you think, oh, I have this technical, let's do this, and you've not checked before that it answers the customer needs. So then you will say, oh, people are not using it, but probably, I mean, when I say people, by the way, it's either the consumer or also the front line, because we also all have, I think, our failures also in the front line, and very often. And I think this is part of the revolution that some of us have already touched. And I think we are all moving to reorganizing the way we work towards agile at scale, because this is really creating these multidisciplinary teams with all the skills involved. So the business, the customer experience, the data, the architects, the IT, and etc. But around the customer and using design, I think that. As long as I think it's interesting to see as we need as much or as many very hard skills like data scientists, etc., as we need also people that are able to understand emotions and design and etc. And the success lies really in the real combination of all these expertise. So everybody needs to understand a little bit the point of view of the other people. So it's like the T-shaped profile. So we need to have everyone with really his expertise, but also be open to understand the others. And I think that we've all said the same. So it's part of this new way of working, where you start with the customer and you put all the skills together, and you are in continuously feedback looping and measuring and sensing what your customer are saying and adjusting. And I think that for me, the biggest impact of that on the culture is as already was digital, because digital was already very data driven, is that you cannot, as a business or marketing, you don't have certainties anymore. You make assumptions, and you need to get much more humble, because okay, you have an idea, but then check it, measure it, and adjust. So this is a big shift, I think.
Yeah, and I think that does sort of bring in the broader question of implementation, right? So we have all these technologies, but to your point, all the different skills and all the different sort of viewpoints of actually making it work. And Eric, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about sort of what you've done in terms of implementation at your organization. Is it enterprise wide? Is it department by department? Is it skill set?
It's many things. Just for a second to add on what Sophie just said, our competition is not the folks here. In terms of digital experience, our competition is Uber, is Netflix, right, in terms of experience. So each time, or even Facebook or WhatsApp or Instagram or TikTok, each time there is a new feature that is really loved by our customers, they expect to see pretty fast kind of similar experience in our own financial experience, right? Insurance, bank. So in our group, it's more complex than most, because it's not one bank, it's like 50 banks. So how to have 50 independent banks to work together, and Jean-Philippe knows that very well, he knows us very well, is very difficult, because they all say, oh, no, I don't want that. I prefer this. Say, well, wait a minute, we have done a system for you. No, I don't want that, I want this. So my job and the job of some of my colleagues is to prepare the culture inside within the group to understand that it's not a choice for us to make, but to hear the customers. And if the customers expect something in the experience, we have to deliver across all our banks, all our insurance companies. Otherwise, they will be disappointed and they may leave us, which is new, because usually, especially in France, when you're in a bank, you don't leave the bank for, 5, 10, 15 years, right? And sometimes never in your life. It has changed because there is neobanks, right? And neobanks, they come with no agencies, no network to feed, very low asset. So for them, they have only one investment, which is the experience. So of course, their experience is absolutely unbelievable. And we have to compete that as well, not only the experience we see in Uber and Netflix. So in terms of culture and implementation, this is basically the big challenges we have to face, I think, all of us.
Yeah, and I think that also brings the question, right, about sort of managing the technology and the staffing aspect, and how has that, I guess, how has that intersected in terms of in terms of the effect of managing staffing? I don't know if you wanted to kick off that part of the discussion.
Who did you say? Sorry.
I guess just talking a little bit more about managing sort of the staffing aspects.
Yeah.
That
So
sort of evolves.
maybe I wanted to illustrate not so much the direct people involved in data science, because I think this is not the main issue. I think that we are all able to recruit people, and we have such a wonderful set of data that is very attractive to a lot of very good data science. Of course, we need also to retain them, but I think that we have very so exciting perspective that it's not a big deal. But I wanted to insist more on the change of all the roles, because I think that all the other roles in the bank need to adapt, and we've touched a little bit upon that already. But let's say, and this is a move that has started a long time ago. So if we take like the credit analysts, I think that we have less and less credit analysts, because as technology improves and the use of data improves, we have more and more automated decisions. So the role of less credit analysts, and also their role is a little bit different, because it's more about checking the models and optimizing them, understand, explain. So it's a change of role as well as the volume. But I think that to come back to the first discussion that we had, it's really for, I think, all the frontline that they need to cooperate. I think that generally most of the roles in the bank needs to cooperate with algorithm or work with robots. So it's like robot or human. It's the human working with a robot, and so of course it's different to have a conversation with the client and at the same time interact with the algorithm. So this is something that we all will need to adapt. And this is the same thing for the marketeers. We were talking about segmental one. Yes, next best iteration. All this marketing automation is about, the algorithms are much better at designing the campaigns. So the role of the marketers becomes very, very different, because it's much more data driven, and it's much more and so I think that it's more that change, which is more complex rather than, I think, the pure data science thing that we can all solve, I think, pretty quickly. This was the angle I wanted to put.
I fully agree, Sofiane. To build on what you just said, I just want to add two things. I think that your point is spot on. In fact, we are facing a new collaboration between human and machine, and we need to understand what are the key capabilities we need to face now to ensure this new collaboration is a virtuous circle for your customers, for your partners, for your colleagues within the bank, and so on. And it's really the thing that we need to address in order to make sure that this collaboration is bringing the results we want it to bring. The second thing that I would like to add is, I'm very pleased to hear you, and to all of you, by the way, because in many cases we are talking a lot about data scientists. And sometimes, excuse my French, I want to say, give me a break with data scientists, please. 1 minute, just 1 minute. Why? Because yes, we need data scientists, but we need to get much more diverse profiles. For example, when we built for a digital bank a conversational agent, at the beginning of the project, I had only data scientists. We reached a level of performance which was okay, but it was not fantastic. And because data scientists are doing data science, that's it. A conversational agent is not only about algorithms, it's about, as you said, client experience, atmosphere, tone, ability to engage a human conversation, human-like conversation. And in order to do it, you need linguists, you need psychologists, you need designer, and as Eric said, and in fact, it's at least in my career, it is one of the first time in 22 years now, even I am still young, as you can see, as that I need to hire a very diverse set of profiles. And that's why it's so exciting. And I fully agree with you. I'm with you. Very glad and very happy to hear that.
The other thing I just want to add is, we go back to the point on how important this area is on conversational. We are seeing phenomenal take-up of this space. The example I gave you about sort of that Erica, to just give you some stats on it, because it's a conversational technology, 17 million clients using it. Last year, the growth has been 60%. Client requests have doubled from to over 200 million requests, with about 100 million since January 2020. The ways in which clients are asking questions to this technology has also grown exponentially, from roughly $250,000 to 250,000 requests at launch to over 1 million currently. So it is certainly, to tie back to some of the points here, including Ankit's point, this is really a phenomenal growth area, and it does marry that digital, bringing it a little bit to life, and putting some human to it, even outside the fact that you need to integrate human accountability on digital. This at least brings it a bit more to life for people, and the take-up is phenomenal.
If I can add one more point to kind of the staffing question, going back to, I think the other really important, segment of customers we need to really think about is making sure that our experience is accessible to all of our customers, right? So accessibility is really, really important as we think about designing these experiences. And if you think about just, all of the voice-enabled experience, right? This population has been using voice for decades, right? So not only really thinking about and designing it for everyone, but also really leveraging the expertise, right? Co-creating. So at US Bank, in our UX design team, we have a special team that just focuses just on accessibility and really drive that experience forward. So really important to keep in mind that whatever we design, right, it's for everyone, and making sure our experience is accessible.
No, completely agree. And I think what we're seeing is, and that, as you've heard through some of our peers here, is there's new players that have to be incorporated into, I guess, what was traditionally called the project, right, or the development cycle, right? And whether that's used to be GUI, bringing in a GUI person, a user interface person, right? Now it goes well beyond that, right? And I think the other thing I wanted to kind of point out is it's also redrawn some of the responsibility lines as well, right? I mean, if I go way back, right, it was technology and the business, and what the technology groups did versus what the business did. It was pretty clear, right? And I think as we're seeing more and more, we use the word self-service, use the word democratization, federation, or whatever. We're starting to see new players that have to be involved in that process. And so, we introduced the data people first, and then we introduced the data scientist people, and the tools that they're having gives them a lot more power that would traditionally, to do things that traditionally were done by an IT organization, right? And so now there's a new collaboration that is forming in terms of how these groups work together, and how that responsibility is shifting a bit, right, between what was traditionally an IT role versus what can be done by a data scientist now. And I think on the other side of that equation, it's put more responsibility on those folks, though, to be disciplined as well. They can't be, just doing stuff and throwing it over the fence anymore. There's a responsibility to make sure that, and we talked about ethics, talk about sustainability, talk about, productionizing, stabilizing, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really moved the dynamics of the team around a little bit. And I think that, that continues to evolve.
Okay, great. And Matt?
I do think, just to thread a couple of these comments together, I think Sophie's comment on the T-shaped skill set is really a critical one right now, because we've had a lot of success over the course of time building up functional domains and expertise. And the challenge has always been, how do you get people to reach across, right? And those are the people that are really hard to find, right? Because it's a person who's not only so deep on their skill set, but they actually are curious enough to look across, make a data-driven decision. It's the designer that wants to understand the data that's going to power the experience, and the business person who wants to go deep enough on engineering to know how stuff actually works. And that, I think, is where you really get this unlock, right? The ultimate opportunity all of us are talking about is we've had millions and millions and millions of interactions with customers over the course of time. They've been person to person historically. How do we deliver that same quality or better experience at scale with all of this data? And that is going to require a different way of thinking, because it's not an individual making a decision in the moment with the customer in front of them. It is a bunch of individuals who have to design an experience to do that at scale, reliably, transparently, ethically. It's a really interesting staffing problem, I think, to thread that needle together. But when you do bring it together, like, magic happens, not to be cliche. It is really an amazing thing to see.
That's great. Well, I'd love to sit here and listen more all day, but I think our time is up. But I do want to thank everyone. It's been a great, engaging discussion. Certainly an exciting time for banking. An exciting. You all seem very lucky to be focusing on this, important topic, and I think it's really going to help to drive the bank and the customer experience forward. So, thank you again to all of you for your insights. Thank you, Jean-Philippe, for the view from IBM. And thank you to IBM for supporting the event. Take care, everyone, and stay healthy.
Thank you so much.
Bye now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.